Hello everyone, this is Gear Review. Today we're taking a look at the Panasonic Lumix GX85, a lovely little camera that I've had for 8 months now. First, the physical appearance and build quality. It is tiny, weighs about 426 grams, has a little bit of heft. It's not heavy, but it has a nice dense feel in this tiny body, so right off the bat you know it's feature packed. The front of the camera has this leather texture on it, like classic rangefinder cameras. Very classy look. A lot of buttons on the back on the camera, most of them fully customizable. Really convenient. Also, you can press down the back dial to enter exposure compensation setting by default, which I thought was a pretty smart way to utilize the limited real estate on the camera. The grip is probably the only complaint I have for the camera body itself. The grip is too small, almost non-existent. It feels really unsafe in my hand, so I bought external grip to make it easy to hold. It has a pop-up flash, but I never use it, but it's nice to have it there just in case. Viewfinder is hot garbage. I've never seen any viewfinder this bad before. It's almost like something out of a cheap toy camera. Anything you want to see, you can see it better on the LCD screen, so I disabled the viewfinder and use it exclusively on the LCD screen. Speaking of the screen, unfortunately this model doesn't offer flip-out screen for ideal vlogging setup. It tilts up and down like old Sony A7SII series cameras, but with less flexibility. The hinges feel tight and rigid, overall less practical than the A6000 LCD screen, but in the end, very similar. It is a nice touch screen though. 1 million dots, 3 inches, very fast and responsive way to control the autofocus and navigate the menu. Now let's talk about what's inside of this camera. 16 megapixel micro four thirds sensor. Modest amount, pretty common for micro four thirds cameras. For casual photography, it is definitely enough. The funny thing is, the 16 megapixel camera from Panasonic have less crop in 4K. This one has about 1.1 times crop. But when you use the newer models like a G90, G100 or GX9, which all have 20 megapixel sensor and a parent upgrade from 16, the 4K crop goes to 1.25 times. It makes you wonder why would they do something like this. It's backwards. The newer model is worse. As mainly a video shooter, I'd rather take the smaller sensor to get less crop in 4K. Back to this camera. It is a very powerful photo camera. The electronic shutter speed goes all the way up to 1/16,000th second. Burst rate goes from a respectable 8 frames per second with a mechanical shutter to a whopping 40 frames per second if you use high speed mode with the electronic shutter. Insane. Autofocus is decent with 49 focus point. Contrast detection, as always, not going to be very fast, but it's very useful for most scenarios. It does have face detection, which helps you when vlogging. This camera also features a very good IBIS system, not as great as GH5 considering the camera is tiny, but it is so much better than any Sony cameras. Panasonic always does a great job doing the IBIS. And now let's talk about the video. It shoots 4K up to 30p at 100 megabits per second bitrate. As mentioned before, it has a little bit crop, 1.1 times. Honestly, I don't mind it that much. Usually I use 12mm focal length for vlogging. With 1.1 times crop, it goes from 24 full frame equivalent to 26.4mm full frame equivalent. So it's not terrible, not at all. Very usable still. Image quality is also very good. If you don't want to crop at all, shooting in 1080p will give you a full width of the sensor. The data rate, though, is not that great. You get 20 megabits per second in 24/25p, 28 megabits per second in 50p. The 1080p image quality is far from the GH5 level due to the low bit rate, but it's better than Sony A7SII series for sure. However, all the videos come out of the camera have a little bit over-sharpened look to it. You might want to tune down the in-camera sharpening in picture profile settings. Speaking of picture profiles, unfortunately it doesn't have Cinelike D. No flat profile options at all, so I always use natural profiles. It looks great straight out of camera, but it's gonna take a bit of work to match the look of GH5 if you want to use both cameras in the same project. Also, the camera doesn't have mic jack. External microphone is impossible on this camera, which is a shame. The onboard microphone is not great, but adding a wind muff will help a lot. So you can tell that this camera is more photography oriented. However, it still does a solid job in video department. I enjoyed using this as my B cam in the past 8 months. It's really fun to shoot with tiny cameras that's so inconspicuous. In the end, you can find a lot of great features in this camera, but also quite a few weaknesses. So it is unfortunately not perfect. It comes very close though. 8 out of 10 will recommend, especially because the price is pretty good. It is not expensive at all, but if you don't feel particularly drawn to small camera body, maybe the G80, G85 is a better choice for you. Also, in the past, I've made some comparison videos, like the image quality comparison in 4K and 1080p against other cameras like GH5 and Sony A7SII and A6300, and also some low light tests as well. So check out the link in the description, in the comment down below, or on the screen. I'm gonna put those comparison videos here so you can have a look yourself as well.
My best friend didn't care about the rules, good on the weekends. I'll be in fools, drifting to deep space. So brave and so stupid, just like the movies. How it's gonna stay in the fight with